If you listen to this story till the end, you might never say again that quiet people are weak, because this is the story of a woman from New York who was born in a poor home, stayed quiet, endured everything, and then one day became so strong that even her boss couldn't look her in the eye. My name is Sophia. I'm 32 years old. I came to America with the dream that hard work would lead to a better life. But I didn't know that here, more than hard work, patience is tested. I came from a poor family. My father worked day and night, and my mother taught us to earn with dignity, not with bowed heads. With that upbringing, I started a job at a private company in New York. A small post, long hours, low pay. But there was so much hope. In that same office, my boss, Mr. Daniel, was different from everyone else. He praised my hard work in meetings, said in front of everyone, "Sophia, you are the future of this company," and I'd silently thank my stars, thinking maybe luck was being kind to me for the first time. Slowly, he started depending on me more and more. Files, reports, presentations, everything became my responsibility. I stayed late, worked weekends, because a girl from a poor home knows opportunities don't come twice. He often said, "I want to see you grow," and I'd link that sentence with my mother's prayers. Then, one day, everything changed. Suddenly, rumors began spreading in the company. The atmosphere shifted. People started avoiding eye contact. And one morning, I was called into the office and told my services were no longer required. No clear reason, no notice, just one cold sentence. This decision was necessary. I sat in the chair, noise ringing in my ears, and in front of me stood my boss, the same person who just yesterday talked about building my future. Today couldn't even look at me. I silently picked up my bag and walked out. Standing on the streets of New York, surrounded by crowds, I felt a strange silence within me. I asked myself one question. Is being poor really such a big crime that a person can be thrown out without reason? That day, I didn't cry, because tears come when hope remains. And that day, hope was broken. When I got home, I didn't tell my mother everything. I just said I lost my job. On the phone, my mother only said one sentence. "My child, justice is delayed but never denied." That sentence stayed with me. I decided I will stay quiet, but I will not lose. I started learning about law, business, and my rights. Everything I was never taught before. Months passed. I kept doing small jobs, but something inside me was changing. I was no longer Sophia, who only knew how to be grateful. Now I was learning to question. One day, I found out that the same company that fired me was stuck in financial trouble and needed outside help. Hearing that, I felt a strange calm, as if time was slowly moving toward balance. I strengthened my name, my identity, everything. And when, a year later, I stood before the same company as an independent consultant, no one recognized me, except my boss, whose face had lost its color. That moment was the first turning point in my life, because I was no longer the quiet girl. Now, I was the woman who knew the truth, had learned patience, and understood what revenge meant. Revenge isn't noise. It just arrives at the right time. Sophia felt a strange calm standing in front of the same building again. The same glass tower, the same people, the same city. But the woman who once entered with her head bowed had changed. That day, there was no hesitation in her steps because she hadn't come to beg for a job. She had been called on the strength of her expertise. The company was in a deep financial crisis. Old clients were gone, new contracts had stalled, and the board of directors needed someone who could quietly understand the problems and solve them without noise. When she entered the conference room, there was silence for a few moments. No one recognized her name, except one face who knew her immediately, Daniel. Her former boss's eyes held both shock and fear, but he couldn't say anything because Sophia was no longer under him. She was an independent business consultant, and her fee, terms, and time were in her own hands. Sophia greeted everyone professionally, placed her files on the table, and began speaking as if the past never existed. But with every word, Daniel's confidence shrank. After the meeting, Daniel tried to stop her. His voice no longer held the old superiority, only restlessness. He said, "Sophia, we need you. Just don't bring up the past. Sophia smiled and replied, I'm here to do my work. Truth or lies will show themselves. That sentence was soft, but it held a power only understood by those who have been broken by silence. Over the next few weeks, Sophia closely examined the company's affairs. Files, contracts, past decisions, everything she was never allowed to see before was now in front of her. Slowly, she realized her sudden dismissal was no accident. It was a plan. An attempt to shift the blame for some wrong decisions onto her so the real mistakes could stay hidden. Knowing this didn't anger her, it brought a strange peace, because now the truth was with her. Sophia started working without blame, only with facts. She prepared reports, identified problems, and suggested solutions. Board members were impressed with her wisdom, and Daniel grew quieter with every meeting. He knew if Sophia started speaking the truth, his chair would shake. At night, returning home, Sophia often remembered her mother's words. My child, respect comes from within. Humans only provide opportunities. She knew this fight wasn't just about a job. It was the fight of that quiet class that is easily used and then forgotten. She decided she wouldn't act emotionally. She'd do everything by evidence and law, because true revenge is when the other person crumbles under the weight of their own mistakes. One day, the company's auditors raised questions. Contradictions in old agreements surfaced, and those files Daniel once tried to make her sign, but which she had refused, now became her greatest strength. Debate began in the boardroom. For the first time, Daniel was questioned directly. He panicked, his voice trembled, and Sophia silently watched it all. In that moment, she realized revenge doesn't require raising your voice. Sometimes staying quiet at the right time is enough, because the truth makes its own way. The winds of change had started blowing in the company, and Sophia knew this was only the beginning. The real decision was yet to come, a decision that would not only change her life, but teach many that silence isn't weakness. It's preparation. When I re-entered that office, no one thought I was the same Sophia who was once thrown out without reason. But I knew I hadn't come for revenge. I'd come to let the truth find its way. I'd promised myself, I won't scream, I won't blame, I'll only speak what can be proven. Because I'd learned that a poor girl's voice is heard only when she speaks with law and understanding. In every meeting, I sat quietly, listened, took notes, and spoke only when I had full evidence. Daniel watched all of this. I could recognize the same restlessness in his eyes that was once in mine the day I was fired. The only difference was that day, I was alone, and today, truth was with me. I read the company's files, examined past decisions, and slowly it became clear. My dismissal was a shield. They needed a scapegoat to hide certain wrong decisions, and I became that sacrifice. Knowing this didn't bring anger, it brought peace, because now I understood what was done to me and why. One day, in a board meeting, I was asked, how can you pull the company out of this crisis? I answered directly. First, we must bring the truth to light. Otherwise, no plan will work. Silence fell in the room. Daniel lowered his eyes, and in that moment, I was sure there was no turning back now. I didn't name anyone, but I placed those documents on the table that spoke for themselves. Board members started looking at each other, and questions arose. And for the first time, answers were demanded not from me, but from Daniel. His voice faltered, and silently I repeated my mother's words to myself. My child, the weight of truth is understood late, but when it's understood, it changes everything. That day, leaving the office, I didn't feel the noise of victory, only a quiet satisfaction, because I knew I hadn't done anything wrong. I'd simply refused to endure what was wrong. And that was the difference between the old Sophia and today's Sophia. I was no longer a victim of circumstances. I'd become the woman who understood the circumstances. I knew the real decision was still pending. And that decision wasn't just about my boss. It was about the system that easily uses quiet people. I told myself, whatever the outcome, I won't step back now, because I'd turned my silence into my strength. And that was the moment where my real story began. I quietly placed all those self-speaking documents in the board meeting. No loud words, no anger, only facts echoing from every page. Daniel's breathing grew rapid, sweat glistening on his forehead. I saw the same fear in his eyes that was once in mine when I was dishonorably removed. The board began questioning. First, slowly, then directly. Why was this file incorrect? Who authorized these signatures? Why was Sophia targeted? Daniel's answers were confusing. He shifted uncomfortably in his chair. I said nothing, just watched. Because now my silence was my greatest strength. A silence that was meaningless without evidence, but today every piece of evidence was with me. Finally, the board announced its decision. All of Daniel's wrongdoings were officially acknowledged. He was removed from his position and action was announced against him according to company policies. When the meeting ended, he left the room as if carrying a weight, the same weight he had once placed on me with my silence. I didn't feel like celebrating any victory. I gathered my files and quietly walked out of the building. The wind was blowing on the streets of New York, and for the first time, I felt it. This wind is free, and now so am I. A few weeks later, the company appointed me as their permanent lead consultant. I set one condition. I'll only work if every decision is transparent and every employee is treated fairly. Today, I am the same Sophia who was once considered quiet and weak. But I've learned. Silence is power when paired with knowledge. Patience is a weapon when it's for dignity. I've started a small business consultancy where I teach women who are like me, who are quiet but not weak, who understands that demanding justice isn't a crime. It's a right. My mother used to say, "The world will mistake your silence for weakness. You just do one thing. Turn your silence into your strength." And that's what I did. Today, when someone asks me, "How did you do all this?" I smile and say, "I only did this. I stayed quiet, listened, learned, and then spoke through silence itself. Because silence is never a weakness. Silence is another name for patience. And patience is the weapon that brings victory with time."